A Japanese principle once guided warriors in the breath before a battle. Not a tactic, not a strategy, but a state of mind that determined whether a man survived or fell. And the absence of this principle in modern life may be the silent reason why so many hesitate, stall, and never bring their deepest ambitions into reality. We live in an era overflowing with information. Courses, mentors, blueprints, data, analytics, an entire universe of knowledge sits one click away. In theory, anyone could build a business, master a craft, shift careers, or transform their circumstances. But reality exposes a different story. Even with endless knowledge at our fingertips, people struggle with problems that should be simple to overcome. It forces a difficult question. If information is no longer scarce, what is? Action. The modern mind is saturated, overwhelmed by choices, flooded with advice, tangled in possibilities. Instead of clarity, we drown in comparison. Instead of movement, we freeze. A person thinks about starting a business and spends months researching, thinks about changing direction in life and spends years analyzing possibilities, dreams of launching a personal project, but after countless predictions, evaluations, and doubts, the fire fades before the first step is ever taken. And then the quiet question rises: why is it so hard to simply begin? Overthinking is not a sign of weakness. It is the natural result of a mind overloaded with decisions. While the internet likes to claim that humans make tens of thousands of decisions per day, more grounded research suggests something closer to hundreds, and each one demands energy, comparison, prediction, emotional weight. Multiply that by fear, insecurity, expectations, and you get a brutal state: paralysis by analysis. The mind becomes so occupied with how to act that action never happens at all. Centuries ago, the Japanese observed this same human pattern long before the digital age magnified it. They understood the danger of excessive thought, especially in moments that demanded decisive movement. So they cultivated a mental state known as kun no kai, the realm of inner emptiness. Not mystical emptiness, not spiritual detachment, but a state where unnecessary thought does not interfere with necessary action. Even Miyamoto Musashi, whose philosophy often appears on Wisdom Timeless Path, wrote near the end of his life that in the void, wisdom and clarity exist without distortion. He was not describing calm meditation, he was describing survival. Because in a duel, the thinker dies and the mover lives. There is no time to calculate angles, no time to rehearse outcomes. Action must come without hesitation, or it comes too late. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Life may not wield blades, but its opportunities behave like sword strikes, sudden, fleeting, unforgiving. When a door opens, you face two choices: act before the moment closes or think until it disappears. Most choose the latter, not by desire, but by conditioning. We grew up rewarded for analyzing, punished for mistakes, trained to fear the cost of imperfect decisions, and now the habit persists, thinking, rethinking, comparing, planning, until regret is all that remains. What if I had tried? Few sentences cut deeper than that. But there is a path out of this mental cage, and it is not found in thinking harder. It is found in thinking less. It begins with understanding kunoseki, a way of moving through the world without the chains of preconception, without drowning in predictions, without letting fear negotiate every step of your life. It may sound distant, but it is far more practical than most imagine. And once you understand it, hesitation begins to dissolve. Before diving deeper, pause for a moment and reflect. What is the thing you have been circling around, planning endlessly, imagining repeatedly, but never beginning? A business idea, a shift in direction, a project that has been waiting months for your first step? Write it down. Acknowledge it. Because once you name the thing that holds you, you are ready for the story that might finally set your mind free. Chapter 1. The woman who never started Emily Carter's story is one that could unfold in any corner of life, in business, in studies, in relationships, or in the quiet, private dreams people carry but never touch. Because everyone has encountered someone who seems destined for success, someone whose talent is obvious, whose insight cuts through confusion like a blade, someone whose presence naturally shifts a room, yet for reasons no one fully understands, she never steps beyond where she is. Emily was that person. At 28, with a degree in business administration and a position as an analyst in a mid-sized company, she lived a life that appeared stable from the outside, But anyone who worked with her knew the truth. She was not made to follow. She was made to lead. When a conflict stalled the team, Emily was the one who unraveled it with clarity. When a project froze in uncertainty, she was the one who found the path forward. When a client felt unheard or dissatisfied, she was the one who restored confidence with a balance of intelligence and instinct that no classroom could manufacture. Everyone saw her potential, except Emily. What held her back was not incompetence, nor lack of ambition, nor laziness. Emily suffered from the silent force at the heart of this chapter. She lived inside her mind far more than she lived inside her life. Her overthinking was not directed toward the problems of others, which she handled with grace. It was reserved for her own possibilities, her own desires, her own next steps. Whenever an opportunity appeared, her internal machinery would begin grinding uncontrollably, analyzing, forecasting, comparing, calculating. A colleague once encouraged her to open a consulting firm because her natural ability to diagnose business issues was far beyond her job title. Emily didn't dismiss the idea. Instead, she spent 3 full months researching models, pricing structures, competition maps, tax landscapes, legal frameworks, market entry risks, convinced that enough information would make the fear disappear. By the time she deemed herself prepared, the moment had evaporated. Markets shifted, competitors rose, and the fear she tried to reason with only grew heavier. Another time, a close friend invited her to become a partner in a promising startup. Emily felt drawn to it. She knew she could contribute something meaningful. But again, the spiral began. She spent 60 days mapping scenarios, outcomes, worst-case failures, personal weaknesses, financial risks. While she wrestled with her thoughts, her friend moved forward with someone else, and the company flourished without her. Emily wasn't indecisive. She was captive. Her prison was invisible yet powerful, a cycle of thought designed to eliminate fear, but which only multiplied it. She wasn't afraid of the opportunity itself. She was afraid of the future she couldn't control. So her mind tried to control it through analysis. And every time she tried to eliminate uncertainty through thought, the same impossible questions rose. What if it fails? What if I'm not enough? What if everything collapses? These questions have no answer. They are projections onto a timeline that does not exist yet. But Emily believed the same lie many brilliant people believe, that if she thought long enough, deeply enough, thoroughly enough, she could guarantee a perfect outcome. But no one can control the future through thinking. No one can outanalyze uncertainty. That was the moment when Ko entered her life, an invitation not to predict the future, but to finally step into it. An invitation that would challenge everything she believed about fear, control, and the cost of hesitation. Sometimes the greatest chains are the ones forged quietly inside the mind, built from the belief that more certainty will one day make courage unnecessary. Yet life never rewards the person who waits for perfect clarity. It rewards the one who moves while still unsure, still afraid, still unfinished. And if there is a truth hidden beneath every hesitation, it is this: the world changes only for those who dare to interrupt their own thinking long enough to take the step their heart has been whispering about all along. Chapter 2. The meeting with Koko was 56, Japanese by birth, raised among the quiet wooden houses and temple roofs of Kyoto, and later shaped by the wide, restless streets of the United States, where she had moved at 30 to build a life entirely from her own resolve. She ran a small interior design firm, not a giant corporation, not a flashy empire, but a steady, respected business whose reputation had been earned through precision, honesty, and a calm, refined intuition for space. It was at a business fair, in the middle of the usual noise of pitches, displays, and hurried conversations, that Ko first noticed Emily. Emily was there on behalf of the company she worked for, presenting a project to a potential client. Ko was merely passing by, but something in Emily's voice made her pause. It wasn't the surface charm of a polished presentation. It was the clarity with which she translated complicated issues into simple pathways, the way she listened between the lines, noticing a client's unspoken concerns, the instinctive ease with which she brought order to confusion. Ko had seen many skilled professionals over the years, but what she heard in Emily was something rarer. Raw potential left untouched. potential that had been quietly redirected into everyone else's success but her own. When the presentation ended, Ko approached her with a gentle, steady confidence. "You're very good at what you do," she said, her accent soft but unmistakably firm. Emily blushed and gave a modest answer. "Thank you. I just try my best." Ko shook her head lightly. "No, you give more than your best, but you give it away. You use it for others, not for yourself." Emily froze, struck by the truth she had never dared to name. Then Ko made her offer. She was expanding her company. She needed someone who understood people, business, and strategy. Someone like Emily. Would she consider joining a meeting to learn more? Maybe even explore the possibility of becoming partners? Emily's heart surged. This was exactly the kind of chance she had always hoped for. Yet instead of accepting, she heard herself say, "Can I think about it?" Ko's smile held no disappointment, only recognition. "Of course, let me know when you decide." And Emily walked away with a storm inside her mind. Some moments arrive not to be analyzed, but to be answered, carrying a quiet invitation that reveals whether a person moves toward their life or circles around it one more time. And Emily felt that truth settle heavily in her chest as Ko's offer echoed in her thoughts, because deep down she knew that opportunities do not vanish by accident. They disappear when hesitation convinces you that tomorrow will wait, even though tomorrow never promised anything at all. Chapter 3. The Prison of the Mind. For the next 3 weeks, Emily lived inside a battlefield no one else could see. Her body moved through her routines, but her mind remained trapped in an endless loop of calculations. Sleep came in fragments. Her nights were spent building spreadsheets, mapping risks, breaking down business structures, reading about interior design trends she believed she needed to master before making any decision at all. Every question she asked herself multiplied into 10 more. Every tentative answer opened the door to hundreds of new doubts. What if I know nothing about design? What if Ko is demanding? What if the business slows down? What if I lose the stability I worked so hard to build? She wasn't seeking clarity. She was chasing guarantees, and life, as always, offered none. After 3 weeks of paralysis disguised as preparation, Ko called her. "Emily, have you decided?" Emily hesitated, feeling the familiar pressure rise in her chest. I'm still analyzing a few things. I just need to be sure." Ko interrupted her, kindly but firmly. "Let's have coffee tomorrow. I have something important to tell you." Emily agreed, her stomach tightening with dread. They met the next morning in a quiet coffee shop tucked away from the noise of the city. Ko ordered green tea with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the storm inside Emily. Emily asked for the strongest coffee they served. After a long moment, Ko looked straight into her eyes. "Why haven't you accepted yet?" Emily swallowed hard. "I'm afraid I'm not ready, that I don't know enough, that I'll fail." Ko nodded, as if Emily had simply confirmed what she already understood. "And when do you think you'll be ready?" Emily opened her mouth, but no answer came. Ko leaned back gently. "Never, because you're not waiting to be ready, Emily. You're waiting to be certain, and certainty doesn't exist." A quiet ache tightened in Emily's throat. Ko continued, her voice soft but carrying the weight of experience. "In Japan, my grandfather taught me a concept he learned through kendo, the sword art he practiced his entire life. He called it kuno-sky, the world of emptiness." Emily frowned slightly. "A world of emptiness?" Ko nodded. "Not emptiness of purpose, emptiness of interference, emptiness from the thoughts that paralyze, emptiness from fear that inflates itself in the mind long before reality ever tests you." She took a slow sip of her tea. When you fight with a sword, even a moment of hesitation is fatal. If you stop to calculate the perfect move, you die. There's no time for analysis, no room for doubt. Your body moves because it must, and the mind steps aside long enough for instinct and training to do what thinking cannot. Emily listened as if a door were opening somewhere deep inside her. Ko continued, "Do you know why I asked you to consider being my partner?" Emily shook her head. "Because I see in you what you refuse to see, capability, insight, leadership. But I also saw something else. You're stuck. Not because you lack skill, but because you overthink your own potential until it collapses under the weight of your fear." Tears gathered in Emily's eyes because the truth of it struck her with painful clarity. Ko's voice softened further. "I was once like you. When I came to the United States, I was terrified of failing, of being alone, of losing everything I had built. I nearly abandoned my dream because I convinced myself that if I just thought a little longer, prepared a little more, planned a little deeper, the fear would disappear. But it never did. What changed? Emily whispered. I remembered Kunoi, Ko said. I remembered that thinking does not erase fear, only action does. Certainty is impossible, but courage is available to you at any moment. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It is the decision to move even while fear walks beside you. Ko reached across the table and took Emily's trembling hand. You don't need to know everything. You just need to begin. The path appears only when your feet touch the ground, never before. For the first time in weeks, something inside Emily loosened, a weight lifted. A thin but unmistakable thread of clarity spread through her chest. I accept, she said quietly. I want to be your partner. Ko smiled, warm and certain. Good, we start Monday. Some prisons have no walls at all. Only thoughts repeated so loudly they drown out every quiet instinct urging you forward. And Emily understood in that moment that the bars holding her were built from her own search for guarantees, a search that had stolen more possibilities than any failure ever could. Sometimes the only way out is to stop negotiating with fear and step into the unknown before the mind has a chance to pull you back into the familiar darkness. Chapter 4: The Awakening of the Flow. Emily didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in a long time, the stirring inside her wasn't anxiety. It was a pulse of excitement, a sense of something opening rather than closing. She stayed up reading everything she could find about Kunnoki, and with every paragraph, a new clarity took shape. The philosophy wasn't telling her to stop thinking. It was teaching her not to let thought become a cage. It was about acting from a place of presence rather than fear, moving with intention but without clinging to the outcome, placing trust in the process rather than in the illusion of absolute control. She found writings on Miyamoto Musashi, reflections on the Book of Five Rings, and deeper explanations of Mushin, the mind that moves without clinging, the mind that acts without unnecessary noise. Suddenly, her entire past made sense. Every difficulty she had faced in life, every moment she had stalled, every opportunity she had watched fade, none of it was caused by lack of skill or lack of information. It was the weight of her own analysis, the compulsion to predict every variable until the moment for action dissolved. She didn't need more knowledge. She needed less interference. Monday arrived, and Emily stepped into her new role beside Ko. Within just a few days, she noticed something that shocked her. Ko did not drown in planning. When a client placed an order, she didn't disappear into weeks of sketches. She sketched quickly, showed it openly, listened, adjusted, and delivered. It doesn't have to be perfect at first, Ko told her. It just needs to be viable. Perfection can come later, or sometimes it doesn't even need to. This was the opposite of how Emily had always worked. She used to polish every detail before anyone else could see it. But Ko's approach worked beautifully. Clients loved the speed, the clarity, and the sense of collaboration. And slowly, something inside Emily shifted. She stopped waiting for flawless plans and began acting with workable ones. She stopped fearing mistakes and began treating them as guidance. She stopped trying to control every possible scenario and started moving with the ones that truly mattered. And as she changed, something remarkable unfolded. The company grew, not because Emily suddenly became more intelligent, but because she became lighter, freer, unburdened by the mental noise that had once suffocated her decisions. Within 6 months, she and Ko had built a thriving partnership. They were no longer just collaborators. They had become friends. And Emily found herself living something she had never thought possible, a sense of purpose that didn't feel heavy, but bright. There comes a moment when you realize the world never asked you to carry so much weight, that the pressure you felt for years was nothing more than the echo of your own expectations. And as Emily stepped into this new rhythm of doing rather than doubting, she discovered that flow is not a gift reserved for the gifted. It is a quiet awakening that begins the moment you stop resisting the path that has been waiting for you all along. Chapter 5: The Invitation. 1 year after their partnership began, Ko called Emily with a tone that carried both warmth and intention. "I'm going to visit my family in Kyoto," she said, "and I want you to come with me." Emily blinked in disbelief. "Seriously?" Ko nodded, smiling. "Yes. I want to introduce you to people who live kunoseki every day, artisans, masters, simple people whose lives are quiet on the surface but profound underneath." A shiver ran through Emily, the kind that comes when life presents an invitation you never expected but instantly know matters. "You gave me a new life," Ko said gently. "Now I want to give you a new way of seeing." 2 weeks later, they boarded a flight to Japan, and what awaited Emily would reshape something deep inside her. In Kyoto, she met a master potter who never measured, never traced, never rehearsed. His hands moved in harmony with the clay, each piece emerging with its own soul. "If I think too much," he said, "the clay feels my hesitation and it stops flowing." She met a sushi chef whose artistry wasn't bound by formulas. She touched the fish, listened to its texture, let the rice guide her. "Food is not science," she said. "It is emotion, and emotion can't be calculated, only felt." Emily also met a 70-year-old kendo practitioner whose movements were startlingly fluid. "I don't fight the opponent," he told her. "I move with him. By the time he attacks, I have already shifted, not because I analyzed, but because my body remembered what my mind doesn't need to." Piece by piece, the truth behind Kunosekai began to crystallize inside her. It wasn't recklessness. It wasn't a rejection of preparation. It wasn't ignorance dressed as confidence. It was the ability to act from essence instead of fear. It was trust in the knowledge already lived, instead of endlessly searching for what might still be missing. It was the courage to inhabit the present moment without demanding guarantees from the future. When Emily returned to the United States, something fundamental had changed. She had not erased fear, but she had learned not to bow to it. She didn't possess every answer, but she understood now that she didn't need to. She couldn't control the future, but she had learned how to build it, one honest step at a time. What stayed with her after Kyoto wasn't a technique or a lesson, but a feeling. The quiet recognition that life moves more honestly when the mind stops demanding certainty. That strength grows not from perfect plans, but from the courage to act while still uncertain. And as Emily carried this understanding back home, she sensed an inner shift, a steadiness born from trusting the moment she was in, rather than the future she could never fully control. A knowing that sometimes the truest path appears only when you stop searching for guarantees. Chapter 6. The Science Behind the Void. It would be easy to dismiss Kunoskai as poetic philosophy or ancient metaphor, but the deeper Emily explored, the clearer it became that modern science was finally proving what warriors and craftsmen had understood centuries ago. Neuroscientists studying peak performance examined the brains of surgeons, elite athletes, world-class musicians, entrepreneurs, individuals performing at levels so high they seemed almost superhuman. And the findings were astonishing. During their moments of highest performance, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for conscious analysis, deliberate planning, and overthinking, became quieter. The brain was not doing more, it was doing less. The very activity associated with hesitation and self-doubt dialed down. In simple terms, when humans operate at their best, they are not thinking more, they are thinking less. Another study measured the reaction times of elite athletes. Researchers discovered that when athletes attempted to consciously guide each movement, their performance deteriorated instantly. Why? Because conscious thought is slow. The brain's automatic motor system processes information at speeds far beyond what awareness can reach. The human body takes in roughly 11 million bits of information every second, yet the conscious mind receives only about 40. Everything else is handled silently, instinctively, efficiently. Trying to drag all of that into conscious control is like attempting to drive a car by narrating every micro movement. Now I turn the wheel 15 degrees. Now I add 20% pressure to the pedal. No one can drive that way without crashing. Driving, like mastery in any form, is not a mental equation. It is an embodied rhythm, something felt rather than dissected. Scientists call this state neural efficiency or flow. The samurai understood it without MRI machines or data charts. They knew that when the mind interferes, the body hesitates. When the mind quiets, the body executes with precision. What modern neuroscience names today, Musashi described 4 centuries ago. The labels have changed. truth has not. It can be unsettling to realize that the mind you've spent years relying on is often the very thing slowing you down. Yet Emily found a strange comfort in this truth, that beneath the noise of thought lives a deeper intelligence shaped by experience, instinct, and quiet memory. An intelligence that has always known how to move long before she learned how to doubt, waiting only for her to trust it enough to let it lead. Chapter 7. How to live the Kunoski realm. At this point, most people ask the same question. I understand the idea, but how do I actually live it? The truth is simpler than it sounds. You don't apply Kunoski the way you apply a technique. You peel away what blocks it. The state already exists within you. Overthinking is just the fog that hides it. The first shift is releasing the obsession with certainty. Stop trying to predict the future and instead return to what is clear right now. Certainty belongs to a timeline you cannot control. Clarity belongs to the present moment, and clarity is always enough to begin. You may not know whether a venture will succeed, but you can know why you feel called toward it. You may not predict the exact path, but you can understand the reason you want to step onto it, and that reason is enough. The second shift is practice. Real, repetitive, embodied practice. Mastery is never learned by thinking. Emily didn't improve in business by memorizing strategies. She improved by acting again and again until her decisions became instinctive. Skill becomes fluid the moment the mind stops hovering over every move. The third shift is movement. Small, fast, honest movement. You don't need a flawless blueprint. You need one step, clearly chosen, taken today. Not tomorrow, not when things align. Today. Even the smallest step interrupts the paralysis that thinking creates. Fourth, welcome mistakes instead of fearing them. Water never fights an obstacle, it finds another path. If you make an error, flow into the next move. If something fails, adjust and continue. Kunoski has nothing to do with perfection. It is the art of continuous motion. And finally, trust the process, not the result. You cannot dictate outcomes, but you can choose to show up. When you immerse yourself in the process, the result becomes a natural consequence rather than a burden you chase. Living this way requires a quiet courage, the willingness to act before the mind finishes its arguments, the willingness to trust the small step instead of the entire path, the willingness to let yourself be shaped by the doing rather than the predicting. And somewhere in that shift, you begin to feel a different kind of strength, the kind that rises not from control but from presence, reminding you that life opens only for those who are willing to move while the fear is still whispering. Chapter 8. The Final Paradox. The deepest truth arrived quietly, almost like a memory rather than a revelation. You can never reach Kunoski because you have never left it. Think about your own life. As a child, you didn't analyze how to play. You simply played. When you were lost in something you loved, you didn't think about how to enter that state. You were already inside it. And when you've experienced your most effortless flow moments, in work, in art, in movement, in love, you didn't try to achieve flow. You simply allowed yourself to be in it. Kunoski is not a technique you must master. It is a natural state you slowly forgot as the world taught you fear, taught you caution, taught you to measure your steps until walking became complicated. The path is not about learning something new. It is about unlearning the overthinking that buried what was already effortless within you. It is about remembering how to move without demanding the impossible, absolute control. For Emily, this realization unfolded gently. She and Co had built a thriving business, yes, but that was not the real victory. The real victory was the peace she carried. Peace with not knowing the whole path. Peace with allowing the process to unfold. Peace with the inevitability of mistakes. A peace that didn't make her passive, but freer, sharper, more alive. And that freedom was worth more than any milestone. Titles can vanish, money can disappear, reputation can shift with the seasons. But the kind of freedom born from inner clarity, that kind of freedom, once discovered, does not abandon you. Miyamoto Musashi wrote at the end of the Book of Five Rings, "When you understand the way, you will see the way in all things." He was not speaking about technique or duels or swords. He was speaking about perception, about living from a place where fear does not rule, where doubt does not drag, where you respond to life without the heavy interference of the mind. Kunoski is not a skill you practice. It is a way of being, It is waking up without the anxiety of needing everything figured out and beginning anyway. It is making decisions without dragging every possibility into consciousness and trusting that clarity arrives through movement. It is living without the illusion that the future must be controlled before you step into it, and choosing instead to step with presence. And perhaps life has always wanted you to move like this, flowing, responsive, unburdened, but you were too busy thinking about the path to notice that you were already walking it. Too busy predicting the future to recognize that you were already inside the moment. Too busy searching for a state that was quietly waiting for you to stop searching. So here is the final invitation. Stop negotiating with overthinking. Stop rehearsing the future. Stop waiting for certainty. Begin flowing. Begin acting. Begin remembering what your mind forgot but your body always knew. That Konosuke is not distant or mystical. It is here, in this breath, in this moment. You do not need to find it. You only need to stop looking long enough to be. If this message touched you, I invite you to stay connected here on Wisdom Timeless Path. There is more to explore, more to uncover, and more to awaken. And before you go, leave a comment. What is the one thing you want to do, but keep getting trapped just thinking about? Thank you very much for your attention. And remember, be present, walk with honor, and follow the path that calls you. This is Wisdom Timeless Path, and I'll see you in the next video.